Dear friends, I welcome you to my channel. This is Taras Berezovets. As the classic of Marxism-Leninism Vladimir Ulyanov, better known by his party nickname, Lenin, used to say, what the Bolsheviks warned about has finally happened. In other words, what all the world's media warned about. Over the past few days, a strike on Russian military facilities on the territory of the Russian Federation by American ballistic ATACMS missiles has apparently occurred, and it hit not just any target, but one of the largest Russian military arsenals located in the Bryansk region. At least, this is what Ukrainian world media report, citing anonymous sources. Jumping ahead, I will say that the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine commented on this situation, but without linking it to the use of ATACMS missiles. He stated that today a strike was carried out on the 1046th Material and Technical Support Center in the Bryansk region. We know that it is located near the settlement of Karachev, 130 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine stated that as a result of the attack on the night of October 19th, the military facility was hit. However, they did not specify what weapon was used. Local residents, as well as Telegram channels, claimed that a missile threat was declared in the Bryansk region shortly before the detonation. A video of the attack was also published online. We now see that Russian punitive agencies are using any methods to prevent further leaks of the video. However, even the short videos that appeared on social media are sufficient for specialists to determine the characteristic damage inflicted on the Russian 67th Arsenal of the main rocket and artillery directorate of the Russian Ministry of Defense, Military Unit 55443. According to the head of the Center for Counteracting Disinformation at the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, artillery ammunition, guided aerial bombs, missile shells, and shells for multiple launch rocket systems were stored there. Some of this ammunition was produced in northern Siberia. Korea. This information was confirmed by sources from the Ukrainian agency RBC Ukraine, as well as the editor-in-chief of the Ukrainian publication Censor.net, Yuri Butusov, who reported that the armed forces of Ukraine used an attack drone for the first time on Russian territory. The strike was carried out on a target in the Bryansk region, and it was successfully hit. At the same time, they referred to anonymous sources in military circles. Local authorities in the Bryansk region reported a mass drone attack. In particular, the governor of Bryansk, Alexander Bogomaz, reported the destruction of 13 aircraft-type drones, claiming that there were no casualties and no damage. The Russian Ministry of Defense in turn reported 16 downed drones. In the region, one of the largest and most well-known Russian pro-military channels, Military Informant, stated that it is likely that the armed forces of Ukraine could have carried out a combined attack using unmanned aerial vehicles, as well as attack missiles or Storm Shadow. Information that the Joe Biden administration granted permission for the use of American weapons, particularly ballistic attacks on Russian territory, emerged this weekend. At the same time, Western publications New York Times and Reuters referred to the fact that the corresponding decision in the White House was allegedly made on November 14th. Subsequently, several European Union countries and NATO European allies also followed the example of the United States and allowed the use of long-range weapons for strikes against Russia. This was stated by Josep Borrell. Against this backdrop, the Russian dictator Putin today predictably stated that he approved the updated nuclear doctrine, which I will discuss a bit later, but for now, a little more official information. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation officially, I emphasize again, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation stated that the armed forces of Ukraine struck an unknown military facility in the Bryansk region with 6 long-range ATACMS missiles on the night of November 19th. This is all the same. The same artillery depot of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, number 67, as we understand, but it is not mentioned in the statement. The statement mentions that 5 ATACMS missiles were allegedly shot down by S-400 and Pantsir systems, and 1 missile was damaged, according to the Ministry of Defense. Fragments of the missile, and not missiles, but a missile fell on A fire broke out at the technical part of this military facility at the site of the impact, which was promptly extinguished. There are no casualties or destruction as a result of the attack by 6 Attack-MS ballistic missiles, the Ministry of Defense of Russia officially stated. Nevertheless, we see, I will repeat, in numerous videos that have already leaked online, which were published not only by independent but also by Russian pro-military ZE channels. Ukrainian 24 TV channel reported that the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine does not officially have information about this strike. Regarding the statements that have already been made today, Peskov stated that the Kremlin has information about the strikes with attack-MS missiles. However, he found it difficult to answer whether the corresponding permission was granted. He only referred to the fact that the corresponding statement was published by representatives of the Western press, again citing an anonymous source in the American administration. Here is the official statement from the head of European diplomacy, Joseph Borrell, who refused to specify which European countries granted the corresponding permission. Nevertheless, he stated that certain EU countries have already allowed Ukraine to use the supplied long-range weapons to strike deep into Russian territory. However, from the nomenclature that was officially published and reported, the corresponding weapons could have been supplied only by France or the United Kingdom, a widely known missile that has already been used multiple times for strikes on the temporarily occupied territories, particularly in Donbass, the occupied parts of Zaporizhia and Kherson regions, and occupied Crimea. These are French Scalps and British Storm Shadow missiles. As Borrell stated, before the start of the meeting of the defense ministers of European Union countries in Brussels, some countries are already openly going down this path, while others are doing so without words. Some have not said anything, but they'll likely follow the example of the United States to fight Russia on its territory. This is fully in accordance with international law. And finally, the United States officially confirmed the permission to strike on Russian territory, not themselves. I will repeat once again, it is clear here. They officially confirmed not the strikes themselves, but merely the permission to use. He stated this today on the sidelines of the G20 summit, which, I remind you, is taking place in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Assistant Secretary of State for the United States, Anthony Blinken, Brian Nichols. He does not often comment on such statements. Today he was entrusted to make such an important resonant statement, and the American diplomat officially confirmed that the Ukrainian armed forces are allowed to strike targets on Russian territory using the supplied American long-range missiles. He stated that the supplied weapons will expand Ukraine's capabilities for defense. In addition, Nika stated that this is done to show the Kremlin the futility of further capturing Ukrainian occupied territories. Nichols also expressed hope that Moscow, after the announced and confirmed permissions to strike Russian territory with Western weapons, might begin negotiations or completely withdraw its troops from Ukrainian territory. The war, Nichols reminded today, marks the 1,000th day since the start of the full-scale Russian invasion, which began solely by the malicious will of Moscow. And this war could end right now if Russia withdraws its troops. It was also reported that an anonymous representative of the U.S. National Security Council stated, as Bloomberg writes, that the West, in particular the United States, will not revise its own nuclear doctrines in response to the announced changes in the Russian nuclear doctrine, which was officially signed today by dictator Putin. The U.S. National Security Council called the relevant decisions made. In the Kremlin, they called them irresponsible and stated that they would monitor the further actions of the Russian leadership. However, more than a cool reaction, I would say, is not at all what they expected in the Kremlin. Clearly, the calculation was that Putin's announcement of changes to the Russian military nuclear doctrine, which I will discuss shortly, was supposed to scare and sober up Western leaders as well as the leadership of Ukraine. As we can see, nothing of the sort happened. It also does not seem to me that today's strike in the Bryansk region, I will repeat, was carried out with missiles, attacks. Different weaponry was used with Ilya. We do not have official confirmation, I emphasize once again. In this case, we are using anonymous sources. Striking the artillery depot in the Bryansk region on the 1,000th day of the Russian military invasion is undoubtedly not just symbolic, it is a signal to the Kremlin. To the Kremlin, I stated today during my address to the Verkhovna Rada that President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky said that Ukraine now has long-range weapons that it can use on Russian territory. In his speech, Zelensky also neither confirmed nor denied that today's strikes were carried out using American ballistic missiles ATACMS. He did not confirm this information, I will repeat, but he also did not deny it. Putin today made a major bet on the 1000th day. Again, we see malicious symbolism from the Russian dictator, signing a decree called "On the Approval of the Fundamentals of State Policy of the Russian Federation in the Field of Nuclear Deterrence," although the essence of the document is completely different. There is no nuclear deterrence. It would be more accurate to call it the state policy of the Russian Federation in the field of nuclear aggression. The decree indeed officially came into effect today as well. This is the most updated doctrine that Putin signed. What does it now provide for? The basis for delivering a perfect strike may be, I quote, aggression against the Russian Federation and its allies. And who are these allies? This is not legally defined here. In principle, it could be any state with which relevant agreements are made, up to the point of good neighborliness of any such state. Well, Belarus is obviously an ally. North Korea, yes, obviously is definitely an ally. A strategic treaty was signed with them in June of this year. China is undoubtedly an ally. Iran is undoubtedly an ally. Syria is undoubtedly an ally. And the list can go on. The only question is whether the entire post-Soviet space is included in this list, except for Ukraine, Moldova, and the Baltic states. That is the question. So, aggression against the Russian Federation and its allies. It is asserted in the document by any non-nuclear state with the support of a nuclear state, as well as by a massive air attack using non-nuclear means, including ballistic missiles and drones. These drones are, as they say, game changers. This is already a completely different story. That is, the level of nuclear escalation is clearly increasing here. Peskov, commenting to journalists, immediately reported that the bearded, mustached grandmother stated that the updated doctrine was published extremely timely. He responded in this way to the question of whether there is a connection between the publication of Russia's nuclear doctrine and the strikes on Russian territory today, likely using ATACMS ballistic missiles. As Peskov stated, the relevant instructions from the president were given in advance. The president himself said that he is in the final stage of preparing these changes. Putin himself stated the need to revise the mission of non-changes in Russia's nuclear doctrine at a meeting of the Security Council of the Russian Federation on September 25th. That is, this was 2 months ago. As Peskov stated then, this serves as a signal warning these countries about the consequences of their involvement in an attack on our country by various means, not necessarily. But as we can see, Putin's nuclear intimidation has largely failed today. In simpler terms, it has failed. The more than restrained reaction or lack of reaction to the publication of this nuclear doctrine indicates that overall, the threshold, so to speak, the painful threshold that Putin has tried to condition Western countries and Ukraine to throughout the war has not significantly dulled. And now the expected and desired reaction of fear and panic from Western allies is not seen. Nevertheless, today the All-Russian Research Institute for Civil Defense and Emergency Situations, also known as VNI-GO-CHS, reported that Russia has begun serial production of mobile nuclear shelters called Cube-M for the first time. Production has been launched in the city of Dzerzhinsk, Nizhny Novgorod region. It is reported that the Cube-M can provide protection for 48 hours from the air shock wave and light radiation of a nuclear explosion. It accommodates 54 people in a standard block. The capacity of the shelter can also be increased with additional modules. Once again, this is additional information, an additional, so to speak, leak that has been intentionally made to enhance the effect today of the messages regarding the publication of the nuclear changes, Putin's nuclear doctrine. Also today, Western media reports on, in essence, a bot attack, noting that Russian bots have become extremely active under all messages regarding the probable use of ATACMS ballistic missiles as well as the approval of dictator Putin's actions in signing the changes to the military doctrine. That is, this is being done purposefully, I will repeat. Along with the decree, there is a targeted intensification. There is currently information pressure on public opinion, primarily in the West. In addition, another reaction to this, as well as a response to the publication of the peaceful initiatives of the new American President Donald Trump, is what we see today in the discussion chat, and there is already a public reaction regarding how a peace agreement could be implemented, in particular the component concerning the deployment of a peacekeeping contingent in Ukraine. Estonia's Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna stated today that European countries must be ready to send their peacekeeping contingents to Ukraine in order to protect it from Russian aggression, of course, after a peace agreement is concluded. The best security guarantee for Ukraine, according to Tsahkna, would be full-scale NATO membership. However, if the United States opposes this invitation to the alliance, Europe will need to agree that it must take on the mission of protecting Ukraine and deploy troops on its territory after the fighting ends. According to several Western military analysts, countries that have already expressed a cautious willingness could serve as a possible component for ensuring Ukraine's security, particularly the United Expeditionary Forces of the European Union, meaning this is a European military component, not NATO. By the way, representatives of Trump's team have also stated this. I will repeat, this plan, the so-called peacekeeping plan or peace plan of Trump, has never been officially confirmed. This was reported by the Wall Street Journal. But we rely on, again, a number of anonymous sources in the circle, in the team of the future President of the United States. Therefore, we must regard this plan, I will repeat, as unofficial. Unofficial, although quite likely. So, the United Expeditionary Forces of the European Union could include a military component from the armed forces of the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Scandinavian countries, the Baltics, and Poland. This is reported by the influential British publication Financial Times. These are the most steadfast supporters of Ukraine, and in Tallinn a meeting of their representatives will take place in December to discuss the relevant initiative. It is reported that Tsahkna, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Estonia, believed that Germany and France could also join this peace initiative in the military component. Macron was the first to publicly announce the possibility of sending Western troops to Ukraine at the beginning of this year. The challenges that European NATO members are currently facing are becoming increasingly obvious, more, shall we say, palpable. And the day before the weekend, there were a number of hostile actions, allegedly from Russia. Who could be behind this? This concerns the severing of 2 fiber optic cables, the largest ones. In particular, the governments of Belgium, Germany and Finland have stated that they are deeply concerned about the damage to the underwater cable that connected Germany and Finland across the bottom of the Baltic Sea. This is stated in a joint statement by the German and Finnish Ministers of Defense and Foreign Affairs, Anna-Lena Baerbock and Elina Valtonen. As stated by German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, the recent damage to 2 cables running along the bottom of the Baltic Sea, which connected Finland and Germany, is the result of sabotage. No one believed that these cables were damaged accidentally, said Pistorius. It should be assumed that this was an act of sabotage. Allegedly, the cables could have been damaged using anchors. Another cable that was damaged a few days earlier connected Lithuania and Sweden. According to the operator, the BSC cable from West Interlink, which connected Lithuania to the Swedish island of Gotland, has completely failed, as stated in the operator's official message. Further measures are to be discussed by the Allies, as stated by representatives of the Lithuanian Navy. According to the conclusions of the Lithuanian Navy experts, the damage occurred in international waters. Earlier, US intelligence and European allies warned about the intensification of Russian sabotage efforts in the Baltic and North Sea regions. A thorough investigation is underway to establish the cause of the cable damage within 5 to 15 minutes. As expected, I repeat, this could involve an anchor or a bottom trawl. But in any case, all this information will be clarified after the private investigation is conducted, and then it will be established quite accurately which ships were directly in the area of the cable break. This is not difficult considering the systems that allow for determining the location of a specific vessel at a specific point, on a specific day, and at a specific time. That is, they will know exactly which vessels were present at that moment and which could have caused the damage. And for some reason, it suggests to me that these will be vessels that either sail under the Russian flag or have been chartered. They may sail under the flags of third parties, but have been chartered or belong to Russian companies. And finally, one more funny piece of news. I'll entertain you at the end. Russian soldiers fighting in Ukraine will receive deer hides for camouflage against drones. In particular, the leadership of the Magadan region is preparing to transfer a batch of deer hides to the Russian military by the governor. Sergei Nosov reported that they will be used by the Russian military for camouflage, as it allows, he stated, to hide equipment and shelters from thermal imaging. It was previously reported that scientists from the Siberian Federal University were planning to go to Taymyr in the summer to study reindeer. In particular, they plan to check whether a person dressed in deer hides truly becomes invisible to thermal imaging. However, the results of this scientific experiment have not been reported. Most experts are generally skeptical about the ability of deer hides to conceal from thermal imaging. The heat of a person. Well, in short, there is no doubt that the Russian military officially recognize themselves as reindeer. Russian soldiers dressed in deer hides will likely be a very easy and desirable target for Russian poachers among the Russian military. In short, for 200 Russian deer and their fellow soldiers from the Russian trenches. That's the news we have for today, friends. Take care of yourselves, subscribe to the channel, like, share, and comment on this video. Don't forget to recommend it to friends and acquaintances. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the armed forces of Ukraine, glory to the Ukrainian Special Forces, glory to the Ukrainian Territorial Defense Forces. Take care. Major Taras Berezovets of the Ukrainian Army. Until we meet again.